Bismillahirrahmanirrahim wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Peace and love, everybody. I'm Brother Ali. This is the Travelers Podcast. Very grateful that you're here. My guest this week is really special. I say that all the time, but I'm just so fortunate to be able to talk to incredible people that I'm connected to in a variety of ways. Most of the people I talk to on this podcast, we're almost 80 episodes in at this point. Most of the people are folks that I've known for years. We've got years of lived life experience together. But there's a whole other category of people that I know of them, and maybe we're in similar circles and communities, but I haven't connected with them yet, but I feel connected to them. And then it's always the case, almost always, that when I sit with them, it's confirmed that that connection is real, and we end up feeling like we've known each other all our lives. And this guest is one of those. Maryum Ali is somebody that we affectionately in our community call May. I don't know why we call her that. I don't know if we're actually allowed to call her that. But her father is the greatest of all time, Muhammad Ali, one of the great people that inspired me to become Muslim and to take the stands that I've taken. And so many of us. I mean, he's one of the greatest, most beloved human beings of our time. And it was Muhammad Ali and Malcolm X that really inspired me. And also my first teacher and leader in the religion of Islam was Imam Warithdin Muhammad, or W. Din Muhammad, who was Elijah Muhammad's son. I'm explaining all of this because Elijah Muhammad led the Nation of Islam from 1930 until 1975. In 1975, he passed away. And there almost were two kind of factions that came on the scene after that. His son, Imam Warithdin Muhammad, or Wallace Muhammad, became the leader of the organization, and he led, I would say, the majority of that community to a more traditional global understanding of Islam. And that was the understanding that Malcolm X had when he passed away. It also, Muhammad Ali followed him and continued on in that line. And then Minister Farrakhan worked with the people who didn't like those changes, and he wanted to practice the way that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad had understood and presented Islam. And so you had these kind of like two communal experiences after that. And they somewhat were at odds with each other. There's certainly alternative views. But in our community, we, especially in our generation, you know, me and May and others younger than us, have always seen these two communities as part of the same family. And so Minister Farrakhan and Wallace Muhammad reunited the communities. And that was a beautiful moment, especially for us. I say all that to say, though, that Wallace Muhammad is, his legacy is really carried on by his daughter, Layla Muhammad. And Malcolm X, his legacy is carried on by his daughters as well, Ilyasa and Amatullah, and these really amazing, gallant, intelligent, smart, just really, I would say, royal, regal women that carry on their legacy. And Muhammad Ali is that way as well. His daughters Hannah and Maryum and Layla and others, you know, they have large families, but these are the people that have really come to the forefront. And not only is Maryum Ali the daughter of the great Muhammad Ali, but on her own, she was a super dope MC. She had a career in hip hop that we'll talk about. She also is a social worker, like my wife is. She works in South Central LA. She also is a speaker and an educator about Parkinson's disease, which is the disease that her father had. So, you know, we start talking and you'll hear right away a couple things. One, you know, like I said, we're from the same community, so we just start talking like old friends almost immediately. But there's a story that's related to me taking the name Ali that I've always heard and that I've always believed about her father, about Muhammad Ali. And I had the chance to ask her about it. And it turns out it's not exactly what I thought it was, or maybe it was. I don't know. But I've definitely told this story. I made a song called Namesake, and I've definitely told this story all over the world. So I'm going to have to make some adjustments to how I tell the story now. But this was a really dope episode. I'm really grateful to be able to have this conversation. We're sponsored, as always, by Zakat Foundation. Zakat is how Muslims give back. The Zakat Foundation is a global humanitarian organization that does really great work all over the world. And they've supported this podcast from day one. So go to Zakat US on social media, check out what they're doing, or go to their website, zakat.org. While you're listening to this, if you're like, yo, I'm glad this podcast exists, and I'm glad that they've chosen not to sell us mattresses and energy drinks and vitamins and stuff, but we're sponsored by an organization that's part of the work that we do, and we're grateful to be connected to them. So go to go to Zakat Foundation and put some money on something that they're doing while you listen to the podcast, and enjoy this conversation with Maryum Ali. MashaAllah. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum assalam.
I'm so happy to finally be able to do this. So we were in the same place at least once. And you spoke and I spoke like 3 hours later. It was one of those like super long Muslim convention things where there's just speakers and speakers and speakers and speakers.
Yes.
And so you spoke at like 3 p.m. and then you had to go somewhere, and I was on at like 9 o'clock. So
okay.
I saw you, but I didn't get a chance to meet you.
Okay.
But alhamdulillah, it means so much that you're here. We really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. I'm honored.
So in the West, there's this hyper focus on individuals. So you've got the star, and then the people in their life or the people in their family are almost seen as like extras in the movie, and their only real value is in proximity to the star. But I mean, we come from culture. We come from a community full of family legacy. So like we've got the star Malcolm X, like Malcolm X is the star. But I mean, his parents were also Garveyite preachers, and his father was also a martyr. And his wife, Dr. Betty Shabazz, like was in our community, like we knew her. And his daughters are authors and ambassadors, you know what I'm saying? And the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's family is the same way. It was Sister Clara Muhammad, and, you know, we have multiple generations. So, I mean, for us, you know, we see you in the relationship to your dad, but we know that he's just one star in the whole constellation of this like royal family that you are your own part of. So I'm happy to talk to you just as you.
Oh, thank you.
You know what I'm saying? What is it, would you say about, and it is actually a trip talking to you because I became a Muslim when I was 15, and I took the name Ali really because of your family. You know what I mean? So when he's talking to me and he's calling me Ali, it's like this, your family is the reason that I have this name.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's beautiful.
Yeah. If you were to describe, you know, and I know this is something that you could probably talk for, you know, a lifetime about, but what does it mean to be an Ali? What are the hallmarks of your family's legacy?
You know, I don't want to sound cliche, but the first thing that comes to mind is being blessed to have been chosen to have been born into Islam. Or being blessed to have been put on a path to be a Muslim. That doesn't happen for a lot of people as easily. And everyone born Muslim don't, you know, value it. So to be born into it and then value it, it's a double blessing. Not that my iman has been perfect my whole life.
Never.
But
nobody.
Yeah, exactly.
There's one
but to
person,
have
and
that,
his name is Prophet Muhammad. Everybody else,
peace be upon him. Right.
But
that to me, it's not even an issue of this material world and dunya and what that means. It's all, you know, what the true purpose of our souls in this world. I was able to not only be born, but I had to really. It made me pay attention because he was known as a famous Muslim, you know? So the weight and the influence and the impact was really great as a young person. What is this thing? What did my father convert to? Why did he convert to it? And those were pressing questions for me my whole life. You know, just growing up, it's like I didn't take that for granted. I knew he was Christian when he was born. I knew my grandparents were Christian when they were born. Why did they convert to the Nation of Islam and then transition into revert to Islam? Why? And so that took me on this whole path. So I think of our family and our legacy. It's very closely connected with our African American history as well.
Yeah. Yes,
And to
ma'am.
me, that's just it's profound to me, especially if you pay attention to it,
Hmm.
because there's a lot there that you will be studying for the rest of your life. And so yeah, that it means more of that, and then also just being of service. When I think of my dad and the name, he was always helping folks, to maybe to a fault sometimes, and
Hmm.
I tend to be something like that. I was just thinking to myself, I have all this stuff I have to do, and I've been kind of doing stuff for other people for 2 weeks. And I'm so behind in my work, and sometimes I just have to stop. It's like I can't do everything. So just that legacy of just being a service and helping people, because my father was like that. He really was. As busy as he was, all the stories I can think of where he's trying to be of assistance, and the generosity he had was really way above average.
What it's always seemed to me is like a combination of just pure dedication to excellence. You know what I mean? Like we know the legacy because he was so much more than an athlete. But even as a boxer, I mean, this man really is the greatest of all time. Like his dedication to training and to his craft, and just the dedication to excellence that we see also in you and your sisters as well. But then also that, yeah, the truth telling, the service, and then also just being willing to sacrifice. And one of the stories that you mentioned, just the virtue and the humanity and the prophetic nature of enslaved Africans and their children in America, of Black American people. And I think about this story that always really touches me is hearing about the champ going and winning the gold medal in the 1960
Mhm.
Olympics in Greece. And I thought it was so funny because like he was afraid to get on the plane, so
Right.
so they said that he went and bought a parachute at the Army surplus store and wore it on the plane. It's just so funny, like the little stories like
Yeah.
that. But
Yeah.
that he came back and could go with your grandmother in Louisville and eat in like restaurants that had been segregated before. And the story is
Hmm.
that, and this is 5 years before he comes out as a Muslim, but that she tried to go back to those restaurants without him, and they wouldn't serve her. And so they
Right.
say that your father was, so incensed by that, that like, if this medal doesn't mean that my people are free, like I did this and they played the US national anthem and the flag went up and everybody had to acknowledge America. I won, on behalf of America. And if it doesn't mean that my people are free, then I don't want something that just is a glory for me. And so the story is that
Right.
he threw the medal in the Ohio River. And I
Yeah.
just think about like as an 18-year-old kid that he didn't know that he was going to go on. I mean, or maybe he did, but there was no way for him to know for certain that he would go on to be the greatest champ of all time and the most
Hmm.
famous person. That could have been the greatest achievement and the only one of his life. So like the
Hmm.
selflessness, the prophetic selflessness to say, I don't want a symbol that only means that I'm going to be elevated and not my people. Like the deep
Yeah.
selflessness of that is just really profound. So I'm curious, what can you tell us about that incident? And one of the things that I was thinking is like, if
Yeah.
that medal didn't actually get thrown in the water, then maybe after he passed, somebody would have found it. So did anybody find the
Yeah.
medal, or does it seem like that medal is really in the river?
So So the story, the way I've always heard it, is that he didn't get served when he had the medal on, not his mom, but
Ah.
that's what I've always heard. However, there is a great debate on whether he threw it or whether he lost it. There are some people that said, okay, that story was made up for the autobiography, so it would be kind of, interesting as a storyline. My his brother says he threw it away, and then other people say, oh, Ali said he didn't. So no one knows whether he did or didn't. My dad's kind of person where I can see him saying, yeah, I lost it maybe later on in life, just to avoid you know
Mm.
admitting that he threw something he earned away. But the truth is only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows where that medal went.
Yeah.
But it was in the autobiography. And I think the bigger point is he gave up his career for 3 years. He didn't know if he would ever give it back, but he gave up his career because, you know, he wasn't going to serve in the Vietnam War because of his religious beliefs. So that's bigger than a medal, actually. So whether
Right.
he threw the medal away or not, saying I'll go to prison and may not ever box again, that's just going to be my life. It's a much bigger sacrifice than the medal. You know what I
And
mean?
you were born during that time, right?
I was born during the time he was exiled from boxing in
Hmm.
1968. Yes, so he was struggling to make ends meet, and he was speaking at colleges and universities, and oftentimes reciting poetry at those events, and explaining his stance as a Muslim.
Hmm.
And that audience was because they were critical thinkers and college students. They were open to, they were open to what he had to say about that. And a lot of the students back then were anti-war, so it
Hmm.
was a good audience for him, even the Ivy League schools. And so I was born at that time, and I being born was a great diversion for him to focus on his first child while he was
Hmm.
going through all this stuff. So it was actually a bittersweet time period for him.
Hmm. It's amazing to me because, as a public person, like you go through highs and lows, and I've always made my living as an MC. Like that music is how I've made my
Mm-hmm.
money. But there are times where things are slow, and I do speaking gigs and things like that, and that's a circuit where if you have a good reputation, then you can get more gigs. And I remember
Mm-hmm.
seeing one of the pieces where some of the white college students were challenging him and challenging him like, why won't you go to war and things like that.
Right, right,
And
right.
he actually said to them like, you're my enemy. Like, if I was going to fight
Whoa,
somebody, I'll
yeah.
fight
Oh,
you.
yeah. I fight you. Right,
You're my
right,
enemy
right.
when I want freedom. You're my
Right,
enemy.
right.
You won't even
Yeah,
defend my
yeah. Yeah, yeah,
religious
yeah.
beliefs, and you say I'm an American.
Yeah,
Just
yeah,
like, man,
exactly.
it's such a, like, basically you're
Hmm.
talking to the people that make the decisions about whether or not you're going to get booked
Exactly.
for more of those gigs.
Right,
Like,
right,
just
right.
fearless to the core, and like
Oh,
standing there
don't,
holding
yeah.
a copy of Message to the Black Man next to his face. So it's
Right,
like,
right, right, right.
if I'm in the camera, then the Honorable Elijah Muhammad is going to be in the camera.
Right,
It's
right,
just,
right.
it's so
Well,
incredible.
he knew his purpose. One thing about purpose, I did entertainment as well, and one thing
Hmm.
about purpose is sometimes your professional purpose will surpass your spiritual one, and you say, "Well, I'm just going to have to sacrifice the spiritual one because I got to get this professional purpose fulfilled."
Hmm.
And that was never where he was at. It was like, well, I want to box and I want to make money. However, I'm not going to sit here and let you, tell lies to me in terms of my heritage, my ancestors, what we've gone through. And
Hmm.
I mean, even today, you have an issue of banning books, banning history, because
Hmm.
this educational system is set up to hide how America formed,
Hmm.
and so that's big, because if people really understood that, then policy would change, empathy
Hmm.
would surface, things would shift in a profound way. So keeping that, these guys who are talking, my father knew, I'm educating you on our life and what we went through. It's even today. You have people, you could talk to them until the cows come home. They will never understand your perspective because they have a privileged life, and they were not trained or socialized or
Hmm.
educated to even know what the true facts are and history is. So, you know, his professional career was not going to, surpass his spiritual one in terms of caring about not getting a boxing gig or a speaking gig. That was irrelevant to him.
So many people that end up being great, they have a moment where they meet somebody great where they see a
Mm-hmm.
projection of themselves. So, Dr. Cornel West was on this podcast. He's a really great friend of mine. When he was a
Mm-hmm.
teenager, he saw Martin Luther King. You know what I mean? And so when
Mm-hmm.
Martin Luther King was murdered, like Dr. West was like, okay, I've been running track and going to dances and hanging out. Like I want to dedicate my life. And Kendrick Lamar, when he was a kid, went outside in Compton and saw Dr. Dre and Tupac and Snoop Dogg like
Mm-hmm.
filming a music video. And he's like, oh, that's what I
Mm-hmm.
am. And it's interesting because I'm friends with Dave Chappelle, and he talks about the moment of meeting your father when he was a kid, when Chappelle was
Yeah.
young.
I
And
saw a picture of that. Have
mhm,
you seen the picture of
yes,
Chappelle?
ma'am. Yeah.
I saw that picture. I was like, wow, I saw that picture last year. It's pretty cool.
And I think about Dave being in the space where he worked so hard, like he balanced so much to be able to, a lot of his fan base has always been white. And he's found these
Mm-hmm.
really beautiful ways, especially in his earlier part of his career, to like dance through lasers to deliver the truth in a way that was palatable. You know what I mean? When you think about like
Yes.
gun store, liquor store, wait, where are you taking me? Or like, I want that purple
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah,
Like
right.
these ways
Right,
of
right.
saying like, I'm not gonna say like there's food, our communities are food deserts, but just explaining, things in really subtle
Mm-hmm.
ways. And then getting all the way to the point that Chappelle's show was the most successful show ever on television. And then realizing like, oh, in all of my dancing through lasers, people are laughing at these things for racist reasons. And so
Mm-hmm.
he gave them the $50 million back and like stepped away and was just like, I'm going to Africa. And I think about like that spirit of sacrifice of like, there's no dollar amount on my purpose and my truth telling, and the way that
Yeah.
that direct inheritance of being able to
Mm-hmm.
not only grow up idolizing your father and your family, but to really have the human touch of inheritance is so important.
Mm-hmm.
That Man, that the phone call that was recorded between you and your father, where he's asking you about your life's purpose, is such a precious moment, and your voice is the
Yeah.
same. Like your voice has the
Yeah.
same like texture. You had that voice when you were a kid.
I did. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
he,
My
he
father he taped us a lot. It's so funny. I'm not talking about this right now. I'll just give a little. I'm working on a project, and I've wanted to do for 20 years, and a part of it is recreating some of the phone conversations with him. And the whole project is not about him. He's just a part of it. But he would tape us because he used to say, when you guys are older, 40, 50 years from now, you're going to be so happy I made these tapes for you. And oh my gosh, my sister Hannah, she owns most of them. And I'm on the phone talking to him. I remember when the Nation of Islam, when we transitioned to Islam, reverted, and the Muslim school closed, and then we went to school in the suburbs of Illinois, and there was a lot of racism, not diverse at all. He was dealing with addressing, his change of religion in the public, and I was dealing with the attempted bullying I would get. One, because of who my dad was, because he was fighting at the time. So there was a lot of issues with that. And then two, being a Black Muslim girl in this predominantly Caucasian school.
mm-hmm.
And I would get bullied, but it really wouldn't work because I was beating kids up.
That's right.
Because I was like, I walked into the school like May X.
Yes,
My head was
ma'am.
up high. I was
There you
proud
go.
to be Black, proud to be Muslim, proud to be a woman. And those little kids can handle that because my energy was very different from the very small percentage of Black kids that were at that school, and they didn't like that.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't walk in with my head down and being apologetic about everything. So when I would get confronted, or even like literally kids pushing me down.
Mm-mm.
I'm Joe Frazier, you're Ali. What are you going to do about it? Pop! I'm going to the principal's office. So I never forget having a phone conversation with my dad. He goes, how's the new school? And I'm like, these kids are tripping, and I'm talking to him about it. But I took that phone conversation and developed something as a whole theatrical piece. I can't wait to tell everybody about it when I'm done with it. But he loved talking to us, and I'm so happy he recorded us. And he would always engage us about purpose, always, because he knew he found his purpose at 12. So he wanted us to at least think about it.
Mm-hmm.
And my answer was always the same. I would say, I want to help people. I want to help people.
Yeah.
So I've done many things in my life, but the through line has always been, if I'm going to be in music or be a hip hop artist, I want to be a role model for young people and be positive and be dignified. If I'm going to do stand up, I want to make people think, which I did for 15 years.
Yeah.
If I and when I saw in the entertainment business being so dark and I saw the trajectory of it getting darker, I knew as a Muslim woman I couldn't stay involved. And that's why I went into social work. I said, well, if I can't be an impact for young people in music, I'll just do it one by one in the community. And because it really wasn't about fame for me. It was about how do I get the biggest bang for my buck and reach as many people as possible. And I think I just watching my dad use his notoriety for that inspired me as well. But like I said, I couldn't, as a Muslim woman, if they give me, a role or something was really un-Islamic, I can't take it, So I'm like, it's no point of me being involved in this.
I remember when your music came out, and I remember, I was, a massive hip hop head at that time. And I think that I heard about you before I actually saw the video. You know what I'm saying? So when the video for When I Enter Your Mind came out, it was like, yo, that's her. And I mean, again, like incredible. Like you are an incredible MC. And I thought it was extremely dope that, even at that time, the version of hip hop that was being pushed to the public, like the big song of that time was Naughty by Nature, OPP. And I think a lot of people, because that was such a big hit record, like I don't think people actually listened to what that meant and what the message of that song really was.
Right.
And the fact that you came out in that time as a Muslim woman, fully clothed and really spitting and really dancing, you know what I'm saying? And you took aim directly at that song. I mean, what was the process like, and what was it like for you trying to come into the industry, specifically in music?
That's funny you remember that line. That's interesting that you remember that. And I didn't really, I just said some scream out. I think the line was some scream out, OPP, baby, yo, won't you be with me? But baby, I'm not with it because I'm stuck up on this morals kick.
That's right.
Yeah. Like everybody, when I first heard Rapper's Delight, I lost my mind. I mean, when I first heard hip hop, I was like, what is this? It was just life-changing.
Yeah.
And growing up with the revolutionary conscious stuff, it was revolutionary. I mean, they were defining social issues, talking about solutions and reporting. They were, those like the African storytellers, really reporting on what was going on in the streets. And yes, it could be rough, but that last verse would be talking about this is not right. This is not fair. This is not justice.
Right. Yeah.
And I know for a fact, hip hop was a major threat to what the status quo wanted us to be talking about and uniting over.
Yeah.
For sure. Because when I saw my country western counterparts, same age, Shania Twain, they were all the same age, and they were these wholesome country women. They were clothed too and singing about the flowers and the stars and love in a nice romantic way. And they had this lane to be upstanding, dignified, young, wholesome Bible Belt women. But that lane was not open and promoted for Black women. It wasn't. And the push was completely the opposite for us. So I saw it. It was very evident. And just like the Panthers, the Garvey movement, even Elijah Muhammad Nation of Islam, all those movements where there was actually a lot good being done in communities, they definitely got deleted. There definitely was an effort to say, no, we do not need all these civil rights activists and promoting this through music and, glamorizing all of this unity with African Americans. This is not what we need, because this is going to spread to other races. They're going to educate other people. And I just believe that because we, as a community, a hip hop community, love that music the way it was.
Yeah.
We loved it the way it was. And if it was, and I'm not saying there wasn't going to be a lane for gangster rap. I'm just saying, like everything else, other genres, when you have all these, diverse artists, there seemed to lack, it's like there's no room for diversity in hip hop.
Right.
So, and people got to understand whatever millions of dollars is behind, that's going to be the incentives. If you're only going to get a huge multi-million dollar deal, rap in a certain way, that's
That's
all
right.
people are going to focus on. I'm sorry. I
Yeah.
remember Cardi B had an interview and she said that her first raps were like positive. And
Mm-hmm.
she's like, oh, no one's interested in this. Well, let me leave this alone. So yeah, it's definitely, and there's some more deeper things historically that let you where you can identify why that was an intentional shift for rap music. But like I said, I was in it for disseminating good information and being a different and different, having a different impact.
Even the
Yeah.
gangster rappers at that time, like you said, I mean, it was almost like being at a family function, the way that hip hop
Mm-hmm.
was. So there would be like fun music, there'd be very
Mm-hmm.
positive music, there'd be some music that's just about being dope, just about being lyrical.
Mm-hmm.
And then, but even the gangster music at that time, if you think about Ice T and Ice Cube and the Ghetto Boys, there was
Mm-hmm.
always a thread through it that it was not glorifying that life because they would follow it to
Right,
the
right, right.
conclusion and
Right,
like
right,
this is
right.
what prison is about, this is what
Right,
you're
right,
gonna
right.
die, like this is what it's like to feel shame
Mm-hmm.
towards your mother,
Mm-hmm.
this is what the mental health toll that it takes on a person
Mm-hmm.
that's in this life. These were like
Right.
real genuine accounts even in the
Yeah.
people that were considered
Yeah.
gangster.
Yeah, and what I noticed a lot about those artists, and you're right, they were very conscious, but there was a lot of contradiction in the albums
Oh
themselves.
man,
Like,
yeah,
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 so
yeah,
so
yeah.
so like, yeah, you could have the conscious gangster rap, Dear Mama, and all that. And I love all these guys are exceptionally talented, and
Hmm.
they're trying to provide for their families. I get it, just but from an Islamic standpoint, which most people are not going to come from that standpoint. It may be slap a B, slap a H on the
Yeah.
ground, but then the other rap was, something wonderful,
Hmm.
so you know what I mean? so,
Oh yeah.
so work, yeah, working in gang prevention and having, clients that are going astray, not only because of rap music, I'm not saying that, but some of those songs were, negative influences on communities were soundtracks to the wrong thing to do too.
I was just
So
thinking like one of the great heroes of that movement is Ice Cube, and I don't say this in any way to disparage him because he's also been such a great, like he's an example of black power in the sense that he's been able to be a cultural figure on his own terms and create movies and things that show good images of black fatherhood and things like that. But I was talking to somebody recently that was like, man, I remember when Ice Cube said it was corny to dance. Like, F R&B and the Running Man, I'm the one to stand with the gun in hand. And was like, he made it corny to dance.
yeah,
And like dance is such an
right.
important cultural component. You know what I mean? Like dance is such a positive thing. And like suddenly I had to be hard, like I had no choice. You know what I mean? So yeah, it's a trip like looking back on those things and seeing what it was like. But man, it was very clear from the beginning that you came through the door like there will be no question about the fact that I'm here to be a queen. I'm here to give a message.
Yeah,
You know
yeah,
what I'm
yeah.
saying?
And I could have done a second album. A lot of people's Janet
Mm,
Jackson's first album flopped. A lot of first albums don't do well. And
mm,
I had to ask myself
mm.
before doing that, because I would have done a lot of things differently musically. But I had to ask myself, do I think this industry will really put the kind of money behind me as a rap artist talking about sex all the time? And my
Right.
answer was no. I
Yeah.
don't think this genre is going to go in that direction in a huge way. And
Hmm.
I was right. I was
Yes.
right. Not only did it not go in that direction in a huge way, it seemed to be a limit on how many female rappers could be out at one time,
Right.
right? It was
Yeah.
like 1%, I mean, in terms of radio play. And then and those female rappers that did get that in a really huge commercial way, you know, it was all about, it was a lot of sexual stuff. It was nudity, it was all that. So I made the right decision because I'm
Yeah.
like, I love I love writing and I love poetry, but why am I doing it? I'm doing it for impact results, to be something different. And I just never saw that business when I was in it. Um ever promoting someone like me.
You know, I've talked to some of the earliest like greats, you know what I mean? Like those are my mentors, you know. So
Mm-hmm.
some of the very, very early people from the Bronx in the
Mm-hmm.
70s that were like the earliest
Mm-hmm.
MCs. And you know, there was like a lot of them credit your father as being like, "Oh, these guys are on the mic. They're just doing what Muhammad Ali does." You know what I mean? And
Mm-hmm.
we know that there's an entire cultural framework and network of speaking in poetry and speaking in rhyme. DJs did it and poets did it, and
Mm-hmm.
you know what I mean? People on the bandstand and like, you know, all sorts of people did that. But I wonder, um, what was your family's and what was your father's relationship with hip hop as an art form and as a musical form?
Not he didn't have one really.
Mm,
Not he didn't have no. He wasn't really. You know his music, his hip hop era, or his it was Little Richard, and it was Chubby Checker, and
mm,
Rich, and what's the other one he used to love? Little Richard, Chubby Checker, what is the Chuck Berry? So
ah,
when we, I never forget, we were that was his music of as being a youth. It was those kind of
mm,
oldies in that era, the '50s music. I never forget being at an event, and I never saw my father react like this to anybody. It's the first time I saw him act like somebody else's Muhammad Ali to his who you know what I
okay.
mean. So we were at this event. He goes, "Oh, there go Little Richard. There go Little Richard." I mean, he flipped out because this is the guy he watched as a kid. And
Yeah,
Little Richard was like a rebel. Back in the day, he wasn't with the makeup and so that was his era. So he really didn't he really didn't listen to hip hop. He wasn't that which just wasn't his era. You know what I'm
right.
saying? It wasn't he was real nervous about me being in it. I'm like, Dad, I'm not gonna get into drugs. I'm not gonna do any of that stuff. Don't worry
Mm.
about it. I said, but yeah, he didn't have really relationship with it. No.
And I guess he probably lost, I would imagine he lost some years with relation to hip hop because in the early Nation of Islam, they weren't allowed to listen to music or perform music or like, I think the Honorable Elijah Muhammad
Not
made an exception for Minister Farrakhan to do the white man's heaven is a
yeah.
black man's hell record.
Yeah. I mean, my father's always listened to music. I mean, I
Mm,
was in the Nation of Islam. Music was everywhere.
mm, mm, mm.
People weren't turning off their radios.
Okay.
Maybe not being a singer or something, but um yeah, it wasn't. I don't remember growing up where you didn't hear music because you're in the nation.
Okay.
I don't remember that. I don't remember that.
So you were like 6 or 7 years old when the Honorable Elijah Muhammad passed away. Do you have memories of him?
So, oh, I do. I do.
Oh man.
Yeah, I do. I wasn't around him. He actually named me Maryum. Um, no, yeah. Um, just very soft spoken. I remember seeing him at his home in Hyde Park in Chicago. We would go over there sometime, mostly when after he died, when Warfdi Muhammad uh, started living in that house. Grew up with Warfdi Muhammad's children and Gina and Layla and Wallace. Yeah, so
Those
we
are all
know
my
the far.
buddies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We actually know the Farrakhan's really well. My aunts and uncle grew up with Farrakhan's kids, and they would always come up to the training camp in Deer Lake, Pennsylvania, his children. And so we all know each other. We all lived in Chicago, so yeah, just remember it was a very disciplined, at this environment culture, very disciplined culture. I'm grateful the path to Islam came through the Nation of Islam because
Hmm.
as Muslims, we're supposed to be proud of how God made us.
Hmm.
Our skin color, our culture. There's nothing wrong with that. And the nation did provide that confidence and dignity and pride and understanding of yourself being a part of creation. We
Hmm.
weren't superior as black people, as the nation says, but that no one was trying to. A lot of people weren't trying to teach us that. So to be able to have that before finding Islam, I think it's a good thing. If you knew how to transition the right way and let go of the un-Islamic things about the nation, but understand that's a part. My father wouldn't have been as powerful as he came off on the news and TV. That was nation training,
Mm-hmm.
right? That was a, but at the same time, that's also Islamic training. You have to look, forces in the face that are saying that you're unequal, you're inferior, and attack that. So I say all the good parts about the nation were within Islam. You just have to leave off the stuff that's the theological things, the shirk that has to go. You know what I'm saying? But people have to understand that a whole group of people needed that. They needed that kind of understanding of who they were.
Yeah.
And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows how to get you on the path, the kind of path you need to get on. He knows what path to give you. And African Americans needed that. We really did.
Well, I converted in the 90s in Imam Worthy Muhammad's community. And
Mm-hmm.
my Imam was Imam Matthew Ramadan, who was married to Angina for a while. And
Okay.
so we were around the Imam and yeah. And it's funny because he would, he would tell stories sometimes, like if you would get alone, or like in a small group of people. And I asked him about your father one time, and he just his eyes lit up, and he was talking about it. And
Oh yeah.
they were both still with us at that point. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, he was just like, they say never meet famous people. He was like, if you ever get a chance to meet Muhammad Ali, meet him, because he's even more beautiful than you would
Oh
expect him to
yeah.
be.
Oh, that's so beautiful. Yeah, my father, watching him treat everyone the same. And what I mean
Hmm.
by that is being in his presence and seeing him approach someone who was unhoused,
Hmm.
treating them the same as, or maybe even better sometimes, than being around so called VIPs. He really didn't shift his manner based on status or anything like that. And I observe that, and I think that's so important just in daily life. I mean,
Hmm.
I'm just happy I was able to observe that for so many years because it became a part of my personality.
We're independent. We're independent. We're independent. We've been shouting it from the rooftop since day one. And to a lot of people, that translates to like, oh, you're broke. And there have been times where we are broke, and there are times where we're doing well. Most of the time, we're somewhere in between. But we know that this is our calling and it's our life's work. And we want to dedicate our lives to something that matters to us and that resonates and sits well and gives us some sort of sense of purpose in our heart and in our soul, and something that we can look back on it at the end of our lives and say, that's what I dedicated myself to. And the second you allow a big corporation or a platform to cut you a check and to become part of that, they start dictating the way that things go. They start calling the shots on what the priorities are, directly or indirectly. And so for us, it hasn't made sense to do that. We started our music career completely independent, no distribution, even nothing. And, there was a period where we flirted with the music industry. We made the music that we wanted to make. And because of that, even though we got some time to be distributed by a big company and to be on the main stages at the festivals and on late night TV, maybe it was because of our message. Maybe it's because of the things that we insisted on doing and not doing. Maybe it's because of the sponsors that pulled out, because of the message that we had. We seem to have had a period of flirting with the music industry. And I think we both decided mutually that it wasn't a love connection. So we've remained independent. And we did that by going from city to city and pouring our hearts out on the stage every day and selling our shirts and our CDs and our records and everything else, and just connecting with the people that it speaks to. And we've continued to do that into this era where we continue to make new music. There's new music coming that I'm really excited about. We'll tell you about soon. But we do the podcast, we do new music. We have learning series. And we're also uploading onto almost like our own streaming service, rare and exclusive music that's never been heard before, video that's never been seen before, talks and lectures and podcast content, and all sorts of stuff that we want to share with the world that's not for everybody, that we're not going to put on the streaming services. Some of it we straight up can't. Some of these mixtapes and recordings and things we just can't put on streaming services because of all kind of legalities and all kind of other stuff. So I say all this to say that we've got the Caravan, which is the way now that we're corralling the community of people that support what we do and that are part of what we do. You're shaping it because you're the one supporting it. And that means a lot to us, and it's meant a lot to you over the years. And so we're grateful to be able to carry this on. If you go to brotherali.com in the join section or just brotherali.com/join, you'll see that there's different ways to get down with the Caravan. We got a $5 level where you just get instant access to everything. We also do Ask Me Anything episodes. There's a type of community building that goes on there. You get first access to the exclusive things that we do. And then we also have a $100 level. And that one is a legitimate community. We got people in there from all different walks of life, different parts of the world, different backgrounds, different lifestyles. And that's a real community where we talk to each other on a daily basis on a Slack channel. We do Zoom hangouts. Those people, a lot of times the stuff that we release exclusively, a lot of times we just gift it to them as a gift, And so this is the way that we're continuing this work and this mission and this legacy. So if you're listening to and enjoying this podcast, you should know that it's happening mostly because there's a community of people that are supporting it, either at that $5 level. There's also a $25 level and that $100 level. Those are the people that no matter who else is involved, those are the people that keep us going week in and week out. With 80 episodes of this podcast now, me and BK really putting our lives into this, continuing to dedicate ourselves to these conversations, to this message about what culture is, the ways that human beings can connect with each other on a heart level based on our humanity. That's what it's always been about for us. And it's specifically about, a certain type of hip hop music or people that connect on the spiritual path, and certain other views about the way that life is. But more than anything, we connect with people based on common shared humanity. And that's not popular now. And it's not something that the algorithm is programmed to support. So even with 500,000 people following us, we post something on social media. If nobody's arguing and there's no gossip and there's nobody's booty cheeks, you know what I'm saying? If I'm not flashing something that you can buy and there's not a sponsor behind it, it's just not going to get supported. It's not even going to be seen by everybody. And so that's why the Caravan is important. And when you join the Caravan, you're taking an active role in supporting the type of messages that you believe in. So go to brotherali.com in the join section and get down with the Caravan. So many of our heroes have either been to prison or been threatened with prison. And when they threatened your father with prison, he said, get a firing squad out here. Like, never mind prison. Like, I'm ready to die. You know what I mean? Put me to death. Like, don't threaten me, sucker. Like, you know what I mean? And so can you tell us about 60 Days In on the A&E joint? Like, did you really sign up to go to prison?
Okay. Let me just. Okay.
Like, I'm wondering how much of this is TV.
No. It was all real, brother.
Okay.
I would have never done. Matter of fact, that was one of the reasons I did it. First of all, I left the mayor's office. I was with the mayor's office of gang reduction and youth development as a regional manager for 4.5 years. And I resigned kind of unexpectedly due to some crazy stuff going on up at the mayor's office. I just couldn't take it anymore. So I'm at home going, man, because I didn't plan on resigning. I just resigned. And I'm going, what am I going to do? So I'm online I'm a social worker. I'm online and in LA and looking for, you got to speak Spanish for this job, that job. I'm like, you know what? I want to work for myself. So I put up a public speaking website. I've always wanted to speak. And I'm like, I've been in the social work game for over 10 years. And I want to talk to other human service organizations and social service organizations about my experience. And so I'm setting all this up. but I'm unemployed. So I get a call. Hey, may I put you on the list? A&E might be calling you. I'm like, what list? Well, they heard about your work in South LA and they want to call you about this social experiment on TV. And I'm like, okay. So A&E calls me and said, hey, we heard you're a social worker and we're looking for people who would have a reason to go to jail undercover to help improve the jail. I'm like, what? So they told me what the show was. I said, look, I don't watch reality shows. I said, I'm not doing anything contrived. I'm not doing anything where it's setups and you're telling me what to say.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not doing it. So we can end the call now. We go, no. You are in there for real. And we don't tell you, we don't say anything. We don't tell you to do something. It's no setups. It's actually very serious. So I almost didn't do it because, there are some editing tricks they do in reality. So I had to make, I had to get some stuff clear with the contract. And I said, wow, I have talked to youth and families and clients who've been incarcerated out, young people whose parents are in jail. Textbook wise, I know what that's like.
Mm-hmm.
But to actually feel that, it's not a prison, it's a jail, but to feel what confinement is like, and to be able to hear the stories of those in there, I'll never get that experience again. And that's for me. I said, now, and if they really are authentically trying to improve the jail with our suggestions, and they do that because of me being in there, alhamdulillah, that's beautiful. So it really intrigued me. So I did it. The only thing that it was harder to watch that show than to be on it, because editing of reality shows in general, the editing is a lie, right? So something can happen and then they'll get my reaction, but my reaction to what they portray me reacting to is not real. I'm reacting to one thing and then they put it to something else, so it makes me look completely stupid. So yeah, it was interesting. And the stories of these women, most of them either sexually abused, physically abused, poverty. A lot of them had the same risk factors as the kids I work with in South LA who are Black. Poverty is just the main thing. You know what I'm saying? That poverty situation and the resource deserts. These communities are resource deserts, and just the ineffective criminal justice system and jail system. It's like, these girls get in, they're on drugs, they're selling their bodies, but they get out and there are no resources to address the issues. And then they get drug tested and they get pulled over by a cop and they're back in. And it's just this recycling of inmates back and forth because they're not rehabilitating anybody. And even though it's a jail, these women sit there and just watch TV all day. And I'm like, think of the programming that could be taking place all day long in this jail. I mean, think of the programming. Nobody wants to be addicted and just, disenfranchised. So I'm going, look at all this time wasted sitting here. And it's just not a system that, produces better people, whether it's jail, whether it's prison. And you have other countries with models where they're actually producing better citizens when those citizens get out because they use all that time. So, the stats show it, it's, state prisons in California cost more than a Ivy League, per inmate costs more than an Ivy League education. So you can look at that right there and know that it's not for rehabilitation. It's for disenfranchising people and making people less than citizens. You come out with no rights. You come out a better criminal. That's not the inmate's fault. That's the system, the kind of facility and institution that it is. So,
I think about the fact that Malcolm, the specific prison that he went to, was outside of Boston, and there was a Harvard grad that had donated his entire library to that institution. So it just so happened that Malcolm had access to this really incredible
Yeah.
Ivy League
Mm-hmm.
library, so
Yep.
that when he
Yep.
was ready to start learning, I mean, he did it all on his own, of course,
Mm-hmm.
inspired by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad to do so. But I mean,
Mm-hmm.
the fact that he had that opportunity, like how many
Right.
more Malcolms are there? You know what I mean?
Right.
Like how many more, people are there. But seeing,
Right.
this is what I mean about, not just your proximity to your father, but also this family legacy of selflessness and sacrifice for the purpose of truth telling. I mean, not that many people would sign up, you know what I'm saying, to go into prison, especially
Yeah.
especially if you don't get to
I'll,
make a thing like, hey, just so you
yeah.
guys know, like I'm not really part of this. Like it's just for the camera.
Well, they were watching us 24/7, and we were able to give verbal and physical indicators if we felt like we were in distress, and they would
Mm-hmm.
come get us. So it wasn't like they threw us in there, and they were watching us on video the entire time, even while we slept.
Mm-hmm.
So, and my positions in South LA as a social worker were rough. So I 10 years prior or more to that TV show, I've been in bad situations with some really
Right.
hardcore people. So
Yeah.
I really was pretty fearless about going into that jail because
Mm-hmm.
my background was, I was prepared for that. And it wasn't even close to what I dealt with in my profession. It wasn't
Yeah.
even, I've been in the middle of drive-bys and almost got killed. So,
Mm-hmm.
I've been in situations. I had a guy walk in on me in the office. I didn't close the door, and I knew he was going to do something to me, and I had to talk him out of the door and just think on my feet and get him out of that door and talk him out. And when he realized I talked him out and I locked the door behind me, he was like, she got me. I mean, how did I fall for that? So I mean, I've been in really tough situations. So I wasn't fearful of the women in the jail. I
Mm-hmm.
really wasn't. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's still an incredibly selfless thing to do
Yeah,
for
yeah,
the
yeah,
purpose of
yeah.
truth telling.
Yeah.
Yeah. How did you choose LA specifically to do your work as a social worker?
So I moved to LA because I wanted to live with my father before going to college. I
Mm-hmm.
moved to LA my senior year of high school, and I had the opportunity to have a whole interrupted 1 year of quality time with my dad, which I didn't have because my parents divorced when I was 7, 6. And so we only got to see him during visits. And and then when we were little and he lived with us, he was boxing all the time. So to have a whole year just with my father, and he was dealing with the beginnings of Parkinson's disease. And
Mm-hmm.
so it was kind of cool being able to be with him during that hard time. And so he lived in California. So I moved, and he was going through a divorce, his third divorce. And so it was a good time for me to be near him. And it was like one of the best years of my life.
Mm-hmm.
1985 to 86, just with my dad, hanging out with
Mm-hmm.
him. And then being in Chicago with that very cold weather and going to sunny California, I never came back. And I just recently moved out of LA 2 years ago, but I love the weather in LA and I love the beach. And my father ended up moving to Michigan maybe 2 years after I got there, but I stayed in California. So I really did love that state. But the past 10 years, I have actually disliked LA. It's not the same place as it used to be. And I actually didn't like it anymore. So I
Mm.
moved.
You also have really become one of the really important spokespeople for Parkinson's disease.
Mhm.
And I think there's something really beautiful about that. You know what I mean? With your father's voice and his example still being present. You know what I mean? With
Mhm.
somebody that can still really carry on that legacy. What's it meant for you to be able to deliver that message and to tell those stories to people that are really suffering and really
Yeah.
struggling?
It means a lot because Parkinson's, my father received his diagnosis. He had the symptoms years before that, maybe 5 to 7 years before. And a lot of people get diagnosed way after they have the symptoms.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a very specific journey for the family and for the person with Parkinson's. It's an ever-changing disease. It's progressive. And a lot, they say everyone's Parkinson's is different, which is kind of true.
Mm-hmm.
There are many symptoms, but you may only have a few. You don't know which symptoms you'll get.
Mm-hmm.
My grandfather on my mother's side had it, and he didn't have any tremors. My father did have tremors, but he was able to walk with his tremors. Some people can't walk with their tremors. So you're going through all of this. Symptoms change over time, and then your medication changes over time. And the family's like going, what the heck is going on? So it's important, because my father is famous and we went through a lot of those challenges and ups and downs, to be able to share that with people who have no idea what's going on. And, you know,
Mm-hmm.
people think it's a death disease. You die from complications of it, but the average lifespan, you know, it may only take 3 to 5 years off your life. So it's not like I have Parkinson's, I'm gonna die next year. My father lived with Parkinson's for over 30 years. His first symptoms came within his first 40 years of you know, so he almost had Parkinson's for as long as he didn't have it. And so you, if you don't, you have
No,
to
he said he
educate
didn't see nothing
yourself
from that.
about a disease like that, any disease really, but Parkinson's changes so much that you really have to educate yourself to see, how do I live with this? What do I have to do to manage it? Try to control it. Don't let it control you, and know that there can be some longevity with it, you know.
There's always this image of people that we have of our heroes that, you know, sometimes the people closest to them, it's like, man, I love the fact that everybody loves this person I'm connected with.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes there are misconceptions, or sometimes there are things that it's like, I wish people understood more about this. Like, we feel like we know so much about your family legacy and about your blessed father. And I mean, I think it's pretty much consensus that this is the greatest human being that lived during our time.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and I know this is from people from all walks of life. One of my primary teachers is Dr. Omar Farouk Abdullah, who's a white American
Mm-hmm.
scholar who grew up in Nebraska and Kansas and Georgia. He said he didn't see
Mm-hmm.
a black person with his own eyes until he was like 13 years old.
Oh,
And
wow.
but he was before he
Wow.
was a Muslim, you know, he was a leftist, and then he became a Muslim right around the time that the draft was starting for Vietnam. So he
Mm-hmm.
became a Muslim, and he went to Philadelphia because they told him that he would have a better chance seeing, like, going to the draft board there to plead his case as a conscientious objector.
Mm-hmm.
So he goes in there, it's like 1968 or something like that. It's maybe 70, 71. And he goes in and he makes his case, and he walks outside, literally. He's walking down the street in Philadelphia, and he runs into your father.
Mm-hmm.
And so he walked up, you know, as a young white guy, long hair and everything, and he greeted your father, Assalamu alaikum. And he said he wasn't sure how Muhammad Ali would respond to this, like, young white Muslim guy, because this is the early 70s, still the Nation of Islam time. And he said that your dad was like, "Wa alaikum salam, brother," and hugged him. My brother was telling everybody, "Hey, he's a Muslim." You know what I mean? And I guess he said that he told your father, he said, you should go to traditional Islam the way Malcolm did. And he was like, man, I
Oh,
didn't know if I should say that
wow.
to him or not, you know.
Yeah.
But he did. But, like, man,
Oh,
we
that's
feel like
beautiful.
we feel like we know so much. And I mean, there are stories that when I think about them or tell them to other people, like, they just, you know, brought to tears again and again. But I
Mm-hmm.
wonder, are there things that in your heart that you wish that we knew, or maybe misconceptions that the public has, that you would like us
I
to?
I would say two things stand out to me. One would be, my father did not pretend to be perfect, and he would owe up to his mistakes and acknowledge them. And if you could do that with your children, he did that with everyone. Me and my father have had really deep conversations about sins and repentance.
Mm,
And this is another thing that I just admire about him so much. Because as proud as he was and as confident as he was, when you may think he's, you know, oh, he loves himself. You know, my father, you know, he was deeply spiritual. And we would have conversations about, I shouldn't have done this. I should hope Allah forgives me. I wish I would have done that. I wish I would have known that. Very reflective. Um, and some things he just, maybe he got this from a Sufi book or a Islamic book, but I remember asking him about the Parkinson's and what he felt about it and his destiny with it. And he said, I'd rather suffer now than in the hereafter. And studying Islam and knowing that calamity should bring you closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He definitely understood that and he accepted that. That I don't think people understand about him, because when you see him, you see many iterations of my father. You see him in The Nation talking about separatism. You see him over here talking about this, and so he went through. He had definitely a spiritual evolution, and it was all videotaped, right? So that Muhammad Ali, from his retirement to his death, was just very reflective, very repentful, that's a word. I don't think that's a word, but anyway, yeah. But anyway, so yeah, I mean, just in talking about it and being open about it, and so people don't know that side of him. I don't believe. The other part of him is his children. He has 9 children. And he always say, my dream is to live on a street on some property where all my kids had a house and we could be with each other all the time. And when you look at video footage of him, or you go to his museum, or you see documentaries, the children are really not talked about, and that's fine. It's on purpose a lot of the time. Some people that have been around him kind of make it an agenda to keep the kids out of things. And that's fine too, because we're not really the kind of people that are going to force an issue about being seen. But he loved his kids. There have been books about him where the author would want the kids to be in it, and the person that's working with him will go, they don't have anything to do with it. And my father knew that his legacy was his children.
Yeah.
And he wanted to always be around his kids a lot. And so people may not know that by looking at the documentaries, by looking footage of him. I would visit him at 14 and take out a picture of me as a baby, of him with me as a baby, or he takes some pictures out of his wallet and he just starts crying. And I'm like, Daddy, I'm right here. Why are you crying? I just wish we could be together more and travel so much. And people may not realize, as a Black father, as a father, period, just his kids being around him was so important, and he was so happy with his kids around him.
Just how deeply loving and how deeply sensitive he was. Like I remember hearing you tell a story once about, that he really understood that part of the industry of being able to live a sustainable life with boxing was that you have to hype and you have to promote the fights and things like that. And sometimes there's got to be, he was really good at putting a lot of theater into that stuff. And I heard once you were telling the story of, what he had this epic kind of relationship with Joe Frazier, but that he realized at some point that Joe Frazier had actually taken some of that stuff personally. And you describe a moment of him really realizing that Joe Frazier had actually been hurt by that.
He was a competitor and had his mean streak, you know what I'm saying? And Joe Frazier had gotten his title without fighting him. And, he was competitive and did have an ego. Everyone has an ego. We all have to keep our egos in check. And what he said went a long way. And Frazier never did anything to him or against him personally to feel like he deserved that kind of ridicule. And I think, my father's doing it as a joke, but I don't think he realized the repercussions it had in his personal life. So he really regretted doing that and apologized and understood that wasn't a good moment for him. But again, to tell us that and admit to that, how that impacted me when I do make a mistake or do something wrong. Like, how are you going to change it? How are you going to fix it? How are you going to acknowledge it and resolve those issues.
And it's one of those really instructive things that I think we need to know that about our great people. There was
Mm-hmm.
and like you said, like a lot of times there's because these people are so great, it's really easy to mythologize certain things, and I don't even think
Mm-hmm.
there's anything necessarily wrong with that. But like I help a lot of people come into Islam, and after looking at the movie and reading the autobiography of Malcolm X, there's this feeling that this man went from being the worst gangster in the world, that atheist that they called Satan,
Mm-hmm.
to being this
Mm-hmm.
model Muslim overnight. You know what I mean? And like maybe that's the
Right.
case, but it's more likely
Nothing.
the case that it was a
Yeah.
process. So
Oh yeah. Nothing's overnight. Yeah.
it's it's
Nothing
it's
is
really
overnight.
it's really a beautiful
Mm-hmm.
thing to be able to witness the humanity of our heroes,
Mm-hmm.
and to see them have those moments of reflection and growth, and to see them especially live long enough to be able to recognize and actually take steps to correct things that they may be, that in
Right.
the moment they didn't realize that
Right.
there was damage being done.
Right. And and the biggest lesson is, we have a very merciful God, and
Hmm.
we never should be in a state of mind to think that we cannot be forgiven.
Yeah.
That's insulting to our creator. So, you know, pray for repentance and change behavior. Change
Hmm.
behavior, and if you mess up again, change it again. It's it's that's those evil dark forces wants us to believe that there's no hope for us
Right.
or whatever we're dealing with, and
Yeah.
that's the bigger lesson. And we constantly have to say, look, it's another day, let me start over, let me
Hmm.
pray on that and keep it going. And be vulnerable enough and transparent enough to tell your kids I'm not perfect, or tell your spouse or whomever, because that's the path to getting better. Doing the right thing is a muscle. It's something we got. I remember I used to run marathons, and it's like I jumped in the marathon without training. I couldn't walk for 2 weeks. I'm like, okay, next time I have to train, the right way. So you're constantly practicing that behavior, and those sharpening those skill sets, your interpersonal skills and your patience skills, and listening skills. You have to be so mindful
Hmm.
of yourself. Yeah.
Therapy, therapy, therapy is a word a lot of people don't even like to hear. A lot of people don't like to even consider and think about. I'm watching The Sopranos again. I mean, again, like I'm kind of always watching The Sopranos, but in the first episode, Tony says to Dr. Melfi, look, I had a semester and a half of college, so I understand Freud and I understand therapy as a concept, but in my life, it can't happen. I can't go to therapy. I can't talk. It's impossible for me to talk to a therapist. And then later, Carmela comes in, and Dr. Melfi says, would you like to talk to a therapist as well for your own stuff? And Carmela says, no, I'm not the one that needs mental help. And I was just thinking, like, those are the two attitudes that a lot of us carry. One that, like, well, therapy is good for other people, but I don't need it. I'm not one of those extremely messed up people that needs therapy. There's a type of judgment that we carry for people that do it. And I've got a lot of people in my life that are therapists and that are in therapy. And for a long time, I felt like, well, that's good that they're in therapy. These people have had horrible tragedies, but I'm doing fine. Yeah, I've had some painful things happen, but I'm doing fine. And I make all this great music about it, and I talk about it all the time. So I'm doing fine. I overcame. I'm living my dream. I'm fine. And the other part of it is that there are people who feel like, well, yeah, but I'm not doing that. That's fine for some people, but not me, because I can't. And the reality is that the thing that's stopping us from going into therapy, that little voice inside of us that's saying, no, 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 no. A lot of times those are the unexamined views that we've picked up along the way about life, about reality, and about ourselves that are actually holding us back. We don't realize that just because we've been able to persevere, a lot of times our perseverance is the evidence of our trauma, or it's the byproduct of our trauma. We go through something crazy, and it doesn't have to be that your whole family got killed in your living room. It doesn't have to be, the classic textbook stories that we hear about trauma. It could just be a feeling in our family, a sensation in our body, a type of stress. The fact, an idea, well, maybe I'm just not a person that's good at relationships. Maybe I'm just supposed to be single. Or maybe I'm just a person that needs to drink to go to sleep. Or I need to smoke weed to be around people. Or, I have, nightmares about certain things, but that's just the way it is. We start thinking that's just the kind of person I am, or that's just the way my life is. And I'm telling you, it doesn't necessarily have to be like that. And therapists aren't always just there to give us these big revelations, but a lot of times they just ask very simple questions in ways that nobody's ever asked us before. And we start to look at ourselves and our lives and the meaning and stories we've told ourselves. We start to see it from a different angle, and it's very liberating. It's really scary in the beginning. I think if we can start by just admitting, I'm scared. And it sounds like a bunch of stuff that I don't feel like digging up. I've moved past it. And yes, we survived it, but a lot of times we survived it by putting our feelings in a little container and not dealing with them. But they're still there. And we're just carrying that container around. You know what I mean? Unable to access entire parts of our minds and our hearts and ourselves and our bodies even. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't have to be like that. So I don't live in America. I don't have a job, and I use BetterHelp to talk to a therapist. So we reached out to them, and we actually started a partnership with them because I like it so much. I appreciate it so much. So if you go to BetterHelp, BetterHelp, betterhelp.com/travelers, that's going to let them know that we sent you there. So they give you a discount, and we also get a commission to help the work that we do here. And then you start answering some questions anonymously about what's bringing you to therapy. And you can even bypass all of that and just be like, I don't want to say anything in this questionnaire. Skip. That's fine. And then you choose your therapist. And if you want, they'll match you with somebody. You go into their calendar and you decide when you want to talk to them, if you want to talk over the phone, or if you want to do it with the camera on, or if you just want to text to begin with. It really is on your terms. And wait until you feel comfortable with somebody. You don't have to give them everything on the first session. Just talk to them. And you can ask them questions. I don't even know if I should be in therapy. Why should I do therapy? You know what I'm saying? What are your qualifications? Where did you learn? What's your approach? What's your philosophy to therapy? If I tell you stuff, how are you going to respond to it? What are you trying to make? What do you want from me? I mean, these are all questions you can ask, you know what I'm saying? And if you don't like their responses, you just change your therapist on BetterHelp. You can do that at any time. You can do it multiple times with no questions asked. And find somebody that you feel good talking to. And see if it doesn't open up entire chambers within your heart and within your life, because that's what it's done for me, and that's what it's done for a lot of other people. So go to betterhelp.com/travelers and see what's there for you. One of my kids asked me, like, is there somebody that when they pass away, you think it'll hurt you? And I was like, man, I am not looking forward to getting that news about Muhammad Ali. And I was in Vegas, of all places, and I was about to go on stage. And it's funny, like we played at Hard Rock Cafe at the swimming pool. Mm-hmm. And it was the sun was about to go down. I hadn't prayed Dhuhr and Asr. And the only place to pray was like this little passage next to the stage that was facing the Qibla, but it was also facing the pool. And I remember one of our imams told me, like, man, Vegas is Shaitan's Mecca. Like, Shaitan is a copycat. Vegas is Shaitan's Mecca. Watch, the people that go to Vegas, like, they act like they're on Hajj. Like, they're beat up. They're like connecting with each other based on how the challenges, what they're going through. They're losing their money, like, they're all this stuff. And so
that's hilarious.
So I was like, okay, right as I started to make salah, I said, Allahu Akbar. They opened the doors and like women with bikinis like just started walking directly in front of me. And I'm just like, all right, Shaitan, I see what this is. You know what I'm saying? So I finished my prayer
That's funny.
and I'm texting with Imam Zaid, and he was saying, like, these are. It looks like this is probably going to be the last moments for the champ, and like, the family's here and everybody's in good spirits and things like that. And I was just like, man.
Wow.
And then my phone died, and I was like, okay, I don't want to get this.
Mm.
I don't want to get this news here. And so I went on stage and I did my set. And when I came off stage, all of my friends, the other artists, were all sitting around because like everybody that knows me know that I'm named after your family. And so
Mm.
all these people are standing there and I can just see by the look on their face. And like nobody wants to say it. You
Mm.
know what I mean? But
Mm.
I could feel it and just, man, yeah. And you were so just gallant and composed and dope and just like when you got up and you read something and it was just
Yeah.
really, you know what I mean? It was really incredible. I think it's a tremendous gift, to be able to have you and and your sisters and your brother in the world and representing for your family legacy, because I really do mean that it's not just, you see, like they say that, the branches of the tree that go all in the sky, there are equal roots that go into the ground that are making
Mm-hmm.
that possible. So for every, star that we see, there's an entire constellation and community and family around them. So you keeping that
Thank you
legacy
so
alive
much.
and all of your work and we're here for another album if you ever want to drop it and you know what
You're right.
I'm saying.
It's so interesting. It is memorial. My what I share with my dad is a love for poetry, and
Hmm.
I knew I wanted to speak. I wasn't, you know, I don't think the children were on the program initially, so we had to kind of say no. We want to speak, and I knew I probably couldn't make it if I wasn't doing poetry,
Mm.
and I knew I could maintain if I was doing poetry. That's how that means that's why I got into hip hop. I love poetry, and I said if I do a poem, I'll be able to do it. And I wrote that on the airplane on the way to the memorial.
Mm.
And yeah, I mean, and it's in homage to him because he loved poetry as well. So yeah. We well, Parkinson's. The last phases of Parkinson's are very specific, and when those phases are. So his last 5 years, we were preparing ourselves,
Hmm.
and every time I visited him, even the last 2 years, I would leave. One thing is Muslims, we don't hide the reality of death.
Right.
You know, and it's sometimes when I'm talking to my non-Muslim friends, they can't handle that because
They
the
think it's
way I talk
morbid
about,
or like, yeah, it's
oh,
difficult for
that's
them.
exactly. They say, that's morbid. And I'm going, so I have to remember who I'm talking to, and they're looking at me
Hmm.
like I'm crazy. And I'm saying, hey, as Muslims, we don't see it that way. So, um, but at the end of every visit, I would always say a prayer and make that visit as beautiful as I could because I just never knew. And I remember the last visit, it was his 74th birthday, the same year he passed. All the kids came together and had his birthday in Arizona, spent time with him. And it just was really beautiful. And again, I left on that and said, if this is the last, so we were preparing ourselves, we could see the
Hmm.
decline. And actually, I didn't really break down till like maybe 6 months later. It's interesting how different
Hmm.
people grieve differently.
Yes.
That moment where it's like, okay, it's time for me to visit my dad now, but he's not there.
Right.
I was like, whoa, this is trippy. I knew I'm a very logical person. So the logic took me all the way up until 6 months. And then 6 months in, it was like he died that day. And yeah, it was crazy. And I would have to stay in the house all day and just,
Mm-hmm.
and I would say 3 years later is when it felt normal.
Mm.
And then probably a lot of people who've lost someone could relate. But
Mm-hmm.
I would drive around LA and I would see landmarks connected to my father and just have to pull over
Mm-hmm.
because it just hit me. But it never hit me that hard until like 6 months in that first 3 years. After 3 years, it became normal. Man. I was public speaking, and when I would bring him up, which I normally do, whether I'm, talking about social services, my journey, because he helped me, inspired me on that journey.
Mm-hmm.
Man, I would do talks and just break down crying, like, and this audience would have to wait for me. So, but it was much later. So it's interesting. Everyone grieves differently, but and then I'll chuckle and go, okay, that was a moment, and I'll keep going, But yeah, but at that time, it was just so much going on. I just didn't have time. I just didn't have time to really let it out until about 6 months later.
You don't have to answer this if it's too personal, but do you ever see him in
Mm.
dreams?
Yes, I have seen him in dreams, and very interesting. I've seen him with Parkinson's suffering in dreams, and I've seen him youthful.
Ah.
And there was a youthful dream that just didn't feel like a dream. It felt like he was saying, I'm all right, I'm waiting
Mm.
for you.
Mm.
Yeah. And I actually, right after he died, the night he passed, I stayed in Arizona that night. Brother, it just felt like me and my little brother were the last ones to leave the hospital, and it just felt like he was in the car with us, in the waiting room with us, because we wanted the press to be gone when we left out of the hospital, and I wanted to actually catch some of the CNN footage about his life because I missed all of that.
Mm.
And I was like, wow, look at all the footage they're showing. So he passed. We were still in the waiting room right from where we last saw him, and we stayed for another hour. And I'm telling you, I felt my dad was with us in the car on back to my friend's house. And I went to sleep. I didn't go to sleep yet. I said my prayers. I closed my eyes. I wasn't asleep yet. And I felt him kiss my cheek and hold my hand. Well, I promise you. And then when I went to Louisville, I was in the hotel room for his memorial, and I felt him hold my hand again. That's just what I felt.
Yeah.
And it was just, and I told my brothers and sisters.
Mm-hmm.
And my sister, I'm not going to say which one, has a relative who goes to psychics. And I don't go to psychics. I don't believe in that.
Mm-hmm.
But it's interesting. She said, I know you don't go to psychics, and I don't you want to hear this. And I'm like, no, I don't want to hear it. I don't believe in that. She said, my friend asked, did Muhammad Ali visit his kids? And I'm like, oh, don't tell me, don't tell me. And she goes, and she didn't even tell, and I didn't even tell her what you told me. And she
Mm-hmm.
said, he for right now, he just visited his oldest daughter, Maryum.
La ilaha illallah.
And I says, I don't know if that's true, but I know what I felt the
Mm-hmm.
night he passed. I felt it 3 times, actually. It was 3 different occasions I felt him at night. And there was only 1 or 2 dreams where it didn't seem like a dream. It seemed like him talking to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I woke up like, whoa, what was that?
I remember maybe it was Imam Zaid told me that the champ had a dream. Your father had a dream. Allah have mercy on him, expand his grave, shower him in all goodness, just keep him forever in the sweet caress of his loving mercy. Give him good news of Jannah.
Amen.
All of the good. If there's any little good that any of us do, may it be also on his record, multiplied over and over and over again. And may Allah overlook any mistakes or just human, frailty or contradictions or anything like that. Because we just don't. There's just not a greater public person that's lived during our time. But Imam Zaid was telling me, I think it was Imam Zaid, that said that your father had a dream once where he was on a tour of Louisville. Like he traveled
I
all the
know
way
what you're
through
about to
Louisville.
say.
And then he
Yeah,
said that
he's actually in a parade.
yeah. And then he went, and then at the end of the dream, he goes to the graveyard, and then yeah, that
Brother.
he soars to Jannah,
Oh,
that
oh,
he soars to
wow.
paradise after that.
Yeah, yeah. My sister Hannah. I think he got that from my sister Hannah. He had a
Mm.
dream. He was in a parade, and everybody was saying, "Hey!" They were cheering him on. It was a long parade all throughout his city. And at the end of the dream, he just got wings and flew into the sky.
Yeah.
And he had that dream a long time ago when he was a young man.
Mm.
But my father had, he didn't like to talk about it, but he had premonitions.
Uh,
He had premonitions throughout his life, but he never talked about. He would say what they were and say, "I saw this," and it would happen. And when someone would
mhm,
say, "You had a premonition," he would just always shy away from that.
mhm,
Like he never he played down that gift that he had. My sister Hannah could speak more about it, but he saw
mhm,
things happening, not all the time, but there were pivotal moments in his life where he would see something happening,
mhm.
and he could see it. Even when you looked at him in his early in his career, the way he visualized being the greatest boxer or being a champion, they write books on visualization,
Mhm.
and that positive thinking and optimistic thinking. There are books on it, and he wasn't well versed in any of those concepts, but he had
Mhm.
it within him as a young man. He had that whole laws of attraction skill set. You know what I'm saying? And he
Yeah,
was
and
always
and
like
it's
that.
you can tell when somebody is like psyching themselves up.
Mm-hmm.
Because a
Mm-hmm.
lot of us have done that, you know what I mean, where we're trying to convince ourselves, you know what I'm saying, and like we're trying to
Mm-hmm.
talk big before a fight or before something like that. But
Mm-hmm.
it's almost like his level of certainty was just like he's just
Mm-hmm.
reporting the facts. Like I'm just giving you the
Mm-hmm.
news. I'm just giving you the news that I am the greatest of all time, and
Right.
you're gonna say it, and
Right.
you're gonna crawl
Right.
across the
Right.
ring, and I know you
Right.
bet
Right.
against
Right.
me, and
Right.
you're
Right.
gonna
Right.
lose your
Right. Right.
money,
Right.
and
Right. Right. Right.
that whole thing, man.
And then more importantly, you say it, but what are you doing to make that happen? Because you can say
Yes,
it all day. I know people say they're going to finish writing this book and they never do, and it's 50 years later.
right,
Are you doing the objectives to get to the goal? And
yeah,
yes, he said it, and then if it didn't happen, well, I'm gonna make it happen. And then he
yeah.
did those objectives. What objectives do you fulfill to get to that goal? And so you need both parts, but to be able to visualize, I'm going to, and if we really think deeply about everything we really wanted and that we got, think
Hmm.
about the state of mind you were in when you accomplished it. You had the same state of mind. We all have that.
Yes.
We just may not use it on a consistent basis, but
Hmm.
we've all had situations where we wanted something and we were driven and got it.
And I mean, that's the thing that always, like, we all have highs and lows in our faith, in our relationship with Allah and things like that. But it seems like whenever I'm teetering on the edge of a low, something else will happen that just makes me realize that everything that I've sincerely asked Allah for, Allah's given me everything. Almost like I should ask for more.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, but like
Yep, yep,
they
yep,
all
yep.
have come. Man, the story that always gets me is the child with leukemia came back and said, I'm gonna beat Frazier or Foreman, and you're gonna beat cancer. Said, no, I'm gonna
Yeah,
die, but I'm gonna tell God I knew you.
I met you. Yeah, it's beautiful. It's beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah, man.
So I'm praying that I'm with my father again and we're both in Jannah together. That's my prayer. Me and all my family members. You just gotta
Amen.
praying for their the hadith about the children praying for their parents. Have those
Yeah.
children that's gonna pray for you, pray for your mercy, and pray that you make it. And I pray for them every time I bow down, the forgiveness of my parents.
Mm. And I pray for him and I pray for your family literally every day. For the 30
Oh,
years that
thank you,
I've been
brother.
Muslim, I pray for you
What?
guys every
When
day.
not now you're on my list. The other Ali, you're on my list, Ali, brother. Inshallah, I'll pray for you as well and your family. It's a thank you for telling me about your name. I did a couple chats with Mahershala Ali on Instagram when my
Hmm.
father passed. He did something really nice, and we spoke a couple. And I was like, oh man, he replied back something. He said something about my dad, and I didn't think he would reply back, and he gave me a long paragraph of where his name come from. And he said that when he reverted to Islam, he chose Ali because of my father as well.
I mean, I think
So
we
I
all
was
did.
like,
I think
wow.
anybody, any American convert to Islam that has Ali as their name, like, I mean, it,
That's a good point. Well, brother, maybe hopefully one day, inshallah, we'll meet in person.
soon,
Now that
inshallah.
yeah.
Thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it,
Thank
sis.
you. Thank you. I didn't want to cancel. I ran and got these headphones when I couldn't find mine. I ran to the store. I didn't want to cancel on you.
Amazing. I don't know if you know about the rapper Pharoah Monch, but when Pharoah Monch was on the podcast, he had the exact same thing happen. Like
Oh,
Pharoah Monch is one
really?
of my dear friends, yeah, and
Okay.
he almost canceled because he didn't have headphones too, and he was like, "No, you know what? I'm gonna go get headphones now. I'm just gonna be a
Yeah,
half
yeah,
hour late."
yeah.
So yeah, so that's
Exactly.
you in the company of great MCs. Much love, sis.
All
Thank you
right,
so much.
brother. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. Special thanks to the great May Ali, Maryum Ali, for being so generous with herself and her story and her time and her wisdom and all of it. I'm very grateful. This was a really special conversation to be able to have. So maybe the story about the champ throwing his medal in the Ohio River, I got to decide whether or not I'm going to still keep telling that story. Because, you know, part of what Muhammad Ali did was to create a feeling and legend, there's myth and there's legend and there are lies, and they're not the same thing. A lie is a lie. A myth is a story that might not be, all of the details of it might not be specifically true, but it holds weight. And then a legend is a story that is true, but it also may have taken on some gravity over time. And it seems like this story that I've been telling about Muhammad Ali winning the gold medal and then throwing it in the Ohio River, maybe it's not as clear. So maybe when I tell the story going forward, I'll call it a legend, which it may be. Allah knows, Allah knows what the truth is. But I'm so happy to be able to connect with Maryum Ali and very grateful to her and for her for the incredible work that she does, not only in carrying on her father's legacy, but also in the incredible work that she is doing and continues to do. So we're grateful. Check out the Zakat Foundation, ZAKAT.org or ZAKATUS on social media. Check out BetterHelp, BetterHelp.com/travelers, and make sure that you join the caravan, because that's how you really support what's going on. We love you. We got another great episode next week. We'll see you then, inshallah. Peace and love. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.